Molly Bish disappeared on Tuesday, June 27th, 2000. When a person disappears without a trace, often the most critical information is hidden in their actions and words from the days before they vanished. Molly Bish's last known whereabouts may hold the clues to what happened to her. One summer morning, a 16-year-old girl reports for her lifeguard job.
Molly had studied to be a lifeguard all winter.
She had big dreams and she was delighted. It was just a good job that she could do.
But minutes later, she vanishes.
We would have never sent Molly there if we thought she would be in any kind of danger.
Was Molly abducted? And was it the same predator responsible for another young girl's disappearance?
She was blonde-haired and blue-eyed, and she was visiting her grandmother when she was taken.
Will Molly's loved ones ever get answers? A family's torment.
We're like trapped in this perpetual nightmare.
I call it between Helen and hope.
It's late June 2000, and 16-year-old Molly Bish is excited about her new summer job. She is taking over her older brother's position as the lifeguard on duty at Cummins Pond in her hometown of Warren, Massachusetts.
My son John had been a lifeguard for 3 years in our local pond, so they were willing to have Molly come on, and John was training her.
I trained her how to use the radio and how to set the pond up in the beginning of the year and stuff like that.
Located 70 miles outside of Boston, Warren is a small town where doors are left unlocked and neighbors keep an eye out for one another's children.
It's a very lovely town. My husband grew up here, and we thought it would be a really nice place to raise children.
The Bish family is a very respected family in the town of Warren.
They're really the all-American family living in a bucolic community in central Massachusetts.
John was a probation officer. Maggie was an elementary school teacher.
The Bishes are an unusually tight-knit family.
I think we're very fortunate just that my parents are still together and we have a close bond with my sisters.
We were just very close. We only had each other growing up, so we just played together. We made forts together.
I go to Molly's soccer games. She would come to mine. It's just we always were together.
Molly is the youngest child and an accomplished athlete. She plays soccer, basketball, and softball at the local high school, where she is also an honor roll student.
She's already talking about going to college, you know, and wanted to work with children.
Molly is outgoing and a popular kid. Recently, she'd started dating a boy named Steve Lucas, and at the end of the school year, they attended the prom together. School has been out for a couple of weeks, and what is supposed to be a carefree season for Molly and her friends begins with a troubling event. One of Molly's soccer teammates is hit by a car while riding her bike to work and is in critical condition. Word of the accident spreads throughout the town. It's early Tuesday morning and Molly's 8th day of work when the Bish family receives the news of Molly's friend.
We were just so frightened when we heard this news, so I went to Mom. I got in her bed, and I told her that her friend was hit by a car.
Even though Molly is upset, it's an important day down at the pond. The summer's first day of swim lessons, which means she has a lot of responsibility as the lifeguard on duty. Molly is running late and must get to work. Maggie goes along for the ride.
Molly was driving at that time because in Massachusetts you have to be 16 and a half to get a license.
Molly and her mom make a quick stop at the local convenience store to pick up some bottles of water. The store's video surveillance system captures the two women making their purchases and shows them leaving at 9:50 a.m. Next, they drive over to the police station, where Molly picks up her required two-way radio before heading to Cummins Pond.
Cummins Pond is a small man-made pond surrounded by woods, is an isolated swimming area. If you didn't know where it is, you wouldn't get there.
At the Cummings Pond beach area, there's no telephones or communications other than the lifeguard was given a portable radio from the police department in case of an emergency.
Molly and Maggie pull up to the pond, just in time for Molly's shift to begin.
So she just turned to me and said, I gotta go, Mom, I love you.
Minutes after Maggie leaves her daughter at the pond, the first swimmers start to arrive for their lessons.
The first parent that came to the scene saw that the lifeguard wasn't present, but did see that the lifeguard's chair was set up, the whistle was wound around the arm of the chair, a pair of sandals were on the ground.
All of Molly's belongings are exactly where they are supposed to be, but mysteriously, her first aid kit is left open, and Molly is nowhere to be found.
There was no speculation about why she was not at her post early on.
Swimming lessons begin, and a local mother takes Molly's whistle and assumes her post.
The original thought was that a 16-year-old girl might have just walked off with her friends.
The mother decides to inform the head of the Parks Commission, Ed Fett, who is Molly's boss, that the teenager is not in the area and is neglecting her job as the lifeguard on duty. Fett reports this behavior to the Warren local police.
Molly's boss, Ed Fett, uses the two-way radio and tells them that she's nowhere to be found.
He made a call to the police department at 11:44 a.m. stating that the lifeguard was missing from Cummings Pond.
The police assume that Molly is ditching work to hang out with friends, or perhaps her boyfriend.
There was some speculation early on that Molly had gone off with somebody and was someplace around the pond and being inattentive to her duties.
3 hours pass, and Molly does not return to the pond. The police decide to notify Molly's parents of their daughter's absence from work.
I got a call at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was our police chief. And he had said to me, where's Molly? And I said, what do you mean, where's Molly? I dropped her off at work. He says, she's not here.
Coming up, the search for Molly Bish gets underway, and her family begins to panic.
We sat in terror, and your whole world has fallen apart.
Bish reports for her summer job as a lifeguard at the town pond. But in an instant, she is nowhere to be found. After 2 hours with no lifeguard on duty, Molly's boss contacts the local police. When they check with Maggie Bish on the whereabouts of her daughter, she is shocked to hear Molly is not at work.
I just knew it in my heart. I had this horrendous fear right from the moment I got that call.
Maggie hangs up and immediately calls her older daughter Heather to explain the situation.
I received a phone call from my mother saying that Molly wasn't at the pond, and it just seemed kind of funny, and we were saying, well, where could she possibly be? It just seemed strange that she wouldn't be there.
Alarms went off. My children have always been responsible. We just knew something wasn't right.
Molly's mother and sister agree to meet at the police station and try to make sense of her bizarre disappearance. But at the station, police still believe there is nothing to be concerned about.
In the early portions of this investigation, there was a lot of different theories. One being that Molly was upset about her friend being in critical condition at the hospital. She might have hooked up with some other friends and went down to visit her.
Molly's family checks to see if anyone visited the hospital.
So I went to Molly's friends' houses. Nobody had heard from her, so I went to her new boyfriend's house.
When Heather arrives at Steve Lucas's house, he is just waking up for the day. He tells Heather that he hasn't heard from Molly either, but he's not too concerned. The two drive to the pond to meet Molly's mom and the police. The eerie sight of Molly's things neatly arranged by the side of the pond makes Maggie hysterical.
I see her shoes. Why would she leave and go with anybody if her shoes are here and if her friends are here? Where's Mom?
We were very confused. She definitely wouldn't have gone anywhere without her shoes on.
Maggie argues with the local police that leaving work without notifying anyone is completely out of character for Molly.
Molly was very conscientious. She would have never left her job. She was very worried about the kids starting swimming lessons. They sort of were under this concept that she had taken off with her friends, but really had no indication of that.
I would never think that. She doesn't have a car, and she's in her bathing suit.
None of it made sense to us.
The local police begin to think that the Bishes may be right, and they call in the state police to assist in the matter.
The Warren Police Department didn't really have a lot of experience dealing with missing persons cases. That's why the Massachusetts State Police came into the case.
By this time, things are getting into overdrive.
The whole scene area was pretty dramatic. There was a lot of the local police that arrived on scene. The local fire department had arrived. State police from the local barracks out of Brookfield responded. State police detectives were responding.
The police were all there. No one knows where she is.
State officials start to consider a troubling but logical explanation for Molly's disappearance. That Molly may have drowned. This would explain why her shoes were still on the beach. But no one in the family thinks it's very likely that Molly, a lifeguard and an athlete, has drowned.
I knew right then and there that this is not what had happened. Molly was the best swimmer in her class.
I knew that she wasn't in that water. I just knew it. And my brother was just so devastated. He came running. We were just all so confused with what was happening.
Even though John also knows his sister is a strong swimmer, he runs directly into the water.
I continue to beeline to the pond to search. And I went in swimming and searching for her. But I knew she wasn't there. Searched and searched and searched until they got me out of there. And I knew it wasn't good, but I had to find out.
They pulled John out of the water and said, "You can't search for her."
A dive team assembles to thoroughly search the murky waters of Cummins Pond.
At this point, it was more of a recovery effort to see that if she was in the bottom of the pond, no one thinking that she wouldn't be found in that area.
Boats are launched. Police and firemen are in the boats. Divers are also deployed. They were at the pond in the water for several hours.
As it started to get dark, you're just sort of taken out of that place, and you're in this disbelief that this is actually happening.
As night falls over the town of Warren, officials bring in lights to continue searching the area.
Search teams, although small at that time, had commenced searching the area of the pond itself in the wooded areas adjacent to the pond.
I just kept waiting for Molly to come out of the woods, or someone was going to carry her out, and that terror would be gone. It didn't happen.
After hours of scouring the pond and the surrounding area, both the dive team and search parties come up empty-handed.
And they decided that it was time to leave the pond.
Police organize a larger search party for first thing in the morning, and the Bishops, bereft and exhausted, must return home without Molly. The horrific reality that Molly has truly disappeared starts to set in.
Going home that first night was just a nightmare.
We sat in terror. You know, we didn't know what was happening, and your whole world has fallen apart.
Early the next morning, the search for Molly continues throughout the area.
The search began to grow almost immediately.
Law enforcement deployed a lot of resources. And we're talking about the daughter of a probation officer.
We deployed all resources, including our mounted units came to the area. We had our State Police Air Wing, which is our helicopters, brought into the area, using both infrared and camera imaging to look at in the forested areas off the center of town.
The close community of Warren pitches in as well. Local proprietors quickly print and display missing person posters in their storefronts, and townspeople initiate their own search parties.
We grew up in that concept that it takes a village to raise a child, and we were trying to find this child. And so everybody kind of went out and started looking in places that they thought might be remote areas or dangerous areas.
You can't just sit around. You feel helplessness. So my friends and I got together, drove around. I mean, we're in a huge area of wilderness out here. I mean, trails on top of trails on top of trails.
The main trail from the beach where Molly disappears comes to a fork. One trail goes further into the forest. The other leads to a cemetery, where a paved entranceway piques investigators' interest.
There is a footpath that leads directly from the beach to the cemetery. So one of the theories was that if someone came to abduct Molly, they could easily take her out through the wooded area to the vehicle in the cemetery without being detected or seen.
The theory of abduction is now becoming a real possibility for the Massachusetts State Police. Judging from the open first aid kit, the police speculate that someone may have faked an injury, and when Molly bent over to open the kit, he grabbed her. They share this possibility with the Bish family.
From that moment on, it just kind of seemed like you were in a bad movie, and you couldn't get out.
Upon hearing the possibility that her worst fear may be true, Maggie comes to a chilling revelation. She thinks she knows who could have done this. Coming up, the search for a suspicious mystery man.
And I'm thinking, what is this man doing here? Why isn't he working? Why isn't he at a job? You know, it's 10 o'clock in the...
16-year-old Molly Bish is missing from her lifeguard job in Warren, Massachusetts. The authorities now believe Molly could have been abducted by a predator. Molly's mom, Maggie Bish, remembers seeing a suspicious man at the pond the day before Molly disappeared. That day started out as an ordinary morning for the Bish family. Maggie drove with Molly to her job at the pond.
Molly was driving and I was in the passenger side, and we pulled in. And there was a white car sitting there.
Maggie watched as Molly left the car and waited to see her safely reach her post. But she noticed there was someone else watching Molly as well. A suspicious man parked in the white vehicle next to her.
I looked at the gentleman in the car, and just one of those feelings you get sometimes.
This individual appeared to be glaring at her, and she was very uncomfortable.
And I'm thinking, what is this man doing here? You know, why isn't he working? Why isn't he at a job? You know, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. So I just said, I'm going to check on Molly's date.
Maggie headed over to Molly and stayed with her daughter while she organized her station.
So I'm saying what a pretty place it is, but I just said to her, I didn't realize there were so many men around, and I was a little concerned. But she says, oh, it's just fishermen, Mom. You know, no big deal.
After chatting for a few minutes, Maggie headed back to her car.
And that same person is still there, and all he's doing is smoking a cigarette. And he's staring at me, and I just got this very nervous feeling. So I said, I can't leave Molly here.
Maggie fussed around in her car, hoping to appear busy to the stranger while waiting for him to leave. And finally, he started his car and pulled away.
And for a second I sat and I thought, oh, I'm just being silly. I'm overly worrying.
But now, she realizes those fears may have been more than just a mother's intuition. Her daughter is missing. And even though she did not see this man the day of Molly's disappearance, she believes he might have something to do with it. Maggie informs police about the mysterious man from the previous day.
Maggie described this individual as approximately 50 years old with salt and pepper hair. He also had dark eyes, he had a mustache, and he was smoking a cigarette.
She works with a sketch artist and comes up with an image of the suspect.
When I saw the composite, it was scary, you know, just the eyes. I didn't recognize the gentleman as being there before at the pond.
A roadblock was set up, and one of the questions was, did you see any people in a white vehicle?
Witnesses around Warren confirmed that they too saw a suspicious man in a white vehicle.
There was reports from cemetery workers of a white car being seen on previous days up in the cemetery area.
But no one has any more detailed information. Police circulate the sketch of Maggie Bish's suspicious man. It received so much publicity that people from all over the country are calling in with tips about the man's identity.
It was a lead that the police began following aggressively.
Unfortunately, the composite fit a lot of people. This developed into thousands of leads. We even had callers calling in to say if you dyed his hair or shaved the mustache or made him 10 years younger, they were trying to make that picture fit someone that they felt was a suspect in this case.
Every tip the police receive leads to a new suspect they must check out.
It cost us a lot of lost time and leads that we were actually checking out these people.
It's almost like we had too many suspects, if that is possible to comprehend. There were just so many people that we were looking at that could have been involved.
The district attorney's office orders a search of 125 white vehicles in the area.
We could not determine for sure what type of vehicle Maggie had observed.
But they don't find any links to the disappearance of Molly Bish. While the investigation continues, police comb the area surrounding the pond, looking for any new leads. But they face a daunting problem. The crime scene is contaminated.
Inadvertently, All of the first responders contaminated whatever footwear impressions were around the immediate area of where her beach chair had been set up. It was hard to determine that this was actually a crime scene at that point. Anybody responding was there to help and try to find Molly at that point. The path that went up to the cemetery area was used and accessible by hundreds of people that had responded to the pond on that date.
The beach area is also covered with cigarette butts and fingerprints.
The lifeguard's chair was moved a little bit. The portable radio was handled by Ed Fett. There was fingerprints that were in the first aid kit that belonged to people that were first responders to that scene.
This leaves police with no concrete evidence. And since there are no eyewitnesses, police can't rule out any possibility, including the heartbreaking notion that Molly simply took off voluntarily.
One of the theories that existed throughout was the fact that Molly could have simply ran away. Molly was reported sighted throughout the United States. People would call in and say they spotted Molly at a shopping mall in the Midwest.
I think at first the runaway is very easy for teenagers because it's just the easiest. She'll come back, and some of them told us that, and they believed it. She'll come back.
But the Bish family finds it unfathomable that Molly would leave them without word.
In my heart, I never went in that way because I just didn't believe it.
They firmly believe that Molly was taken against her will, possibly by the man in the white car. But if Molly has fallen victim to foul play, police also think there is a possibility that she could have known her attacker.
We looked at a lot of people that knew Molly. We looked at people in the area.
Ed Fett, Molly's boss, was one of the first to arrive at the pond the day Molly went missing. His fingerprints are all over Molly's belongings.
To be honest, I didn't know him. He had bought a book up for Molly to look at swimsuits and some supplies.
Fett explains that he rummaged through the first aid kit and used her police radio to alert authorities. Police recognize that there may be no meaning behind the fingerprints, but take a closer look at Fett. The morning of Molly's disappearance, Ed Fett made a trip to the local hardware store. There, he runs into John Bish, Molly's older brother.
He knows me. He knows I was the lifeguard for prior 3 years. He knows my sister was a lifeguard.
Fett does not mention that Molly was missing from work that day.
So he didn't even notify me because I don't think he thought it was a big deal. You know, everybody thinks this is nothing.
The police consider this run-in a solid alibi for Ed Fett's whereabouts that morning, so they move on to other potential people of interest. They turn their attention to Molly's boyfriend, Steve Lucas, who is found to have a mysterious cut on his face the day of the disappearance. Coming up, a strange connection is made between Molly's disappearance and another local case.
Given the close proximity to these two cases, there's a possibility that they were linked.
From her lifeguard chair, just minutes after her mother Maggie dropped her off at work. Maggie had seen a suspicious man in a white vehicle watching her daughter the previous day and believes he has something to do with her disappearance. But while the police are exploring that theory, they also take a look at people closest to Molly, including her boyfriend, Steve Lucas.
Steve Lucas was examined because this is what typically happens. Law enforcement looks at men in the lives of women who go missing.
He was a very new boyfriend. She had only been with him for 3 months.
Recently, Molly attended the prom with Steve. And while some believe the couple seemed happy, others felt they were mismatched.
He was quieter. He was actually much quieter, where Molly would be the silly one.
Molly and Steve kind of had two separate tracks in life, where Molly was very outgoing and played sports and soccer and stuff in town, and Steve was more of a homebody.
This young man, he probably would have been the one that I would have picked, but Molly liked him for some reason. He was never unkind or disrespectful when he came here, so I have no real reason not to like him.
The police start honing in on Steve Lucas as a suspect.
There were things that bothered me in the early onset of this investigation with Steve, for the simple reason that he was not cooperative with law enforcement.
When the police do talk to Lucas on the day Molly disappears, they notice that he has a cut on his face.
He had a cut lip and he had an eyebrow ring that was missing. Steve explained that when he got up out of bed, he had hit his bedroom door, cutting his lip. Several of his friends had described it as other causes for the incident. One individual we interviewed said that Steve immediately told him that he had a cold sore on his lip.
Steve's inconsistent explanations for his injury raise questions, and his behavior during the initial search for Molly also strikes investigators as odd.
A lot of Molly's friends and friends of Steve Lucas that were there at the beach area when it was being searched participated in the search. They went into the woods. Steve was not participating in any of the ongoing searches in the area for Molly.
But the Bish family doesn't believe Steve had anything to do with Molly's disappearance.
He was there the day, several hours after. If a 17-year-old boy place a body in 2 hours and come back and go around the family, then, you know, he's obviously a great sociopath.
Molly's loved ones feel certain that if Molly's been abducted, it was not the act of a teenage boy, but rather a well-thought-out plan by a calculating predator.
We are looking for a suspect who knew the pond, who knew the fishing area. Molly had only been at her position as a lifeguard for 8 days, so they had to know her schedule.
I think in some ways Molly maybe gave us a hint. It was a fisherman, Mom. Maybe it was somebody who's seen her and seen her long legs.
Although the police still have their doubts about Steve Lucas, there is no evidence pointing towards his involvement. They call him in for a polygraph.
Polygraph results, as was told to me, was that Steve had passed the polygraph examination.
Investigators then decide to concentrate on the area's local sex offenders.
There are a disproportionate number of sex offenders that just happen to live in the area.
They check with these men for alibis.
A lot of the sex offenders in this area are not gainfully employed. It was hard for us to determine their whereabouts on June 27th because we didn't have like payroll records to look at, telephone records that could actually vouch for these individuals. You have to basically go on their word.
So the state police call several of them into the station to take polygraphs. Some of them show signs of deception.
Signs of deception do not show that that person was responsible for the disappearance of Molly Bish. It would just cause for more examination into that individual's history, background, and whereabouts. All it did was add to our list of people in the database.
With each passing day, the police database of suspicious characters is growing, but all to no avail. The Bishes are fighting to stay hopeful. Despite so many potential leads, the Molly Bish case becomes one of the most challenging missing person cases the local and state police have faced. It seems that 16-year-old Molly has vanished without a trace or become the victim of the perfect crime.
The state police basically spent 24/7 on site. We would go home, we would change, we would refresh, we'd put a fresh set of clothes on, shower and shave, and go right back to the town of Warren to continue the investigation.
The Warren Police Station becomes headquarters for the investigation. State police officers are practically living there. And as the months pass, the Bish family tries to go back to some semblance of a normal life.
To start your normal life again, which will never be normal again. It was hard.
We're like trapped in this perpetual nightmare, and it's almost unreal. It's like your brain takes you to a different place so you can just survive.
We just kept trying to live through all those simple things. The first Christmas, her birthday came. How do you have a birthday when she's not there? And I mean, there were days I had to just pray and try to keep the demons out of my head because they would try to haunt me. I call it between Helen and hope.
Eventually, the state police must leave the headquarters at Warren and return home to continue the investigation.
So they moved back to Worcester, and then we said, now what do we do? I mean, the calls got a little bit less.
Although the investigation continues, the Bish family must live without any answers for years.
Over the course of years, there was many different things that we looked at as being investigators, one of which was John Bish being a probation officer. We looked at some of the people that he came in contact with.
Detectives run through Molly's father's old cases to see if there's anyone who might be seeking revenge.
Most of the people that we spoke to that he did have on probation or had on probation had only the best words to say about John. He's very caring, very generous, and very mild-mannered in his approach to individuals.
By the spring of 2003, it's been almost 3 years since Molly Bish disappeared from her summer job as a lifeguard. And still, there are hundreds of tips coming into the police from all over the country. Finally, one of them seems promising.
2 separate hits on Molly being spotted in Miami, Florida.
2 unrelated eyewitnesses calling tips to the Massachusetts State Police. Both put Molly Bish in Miami.
We actually located them to be about a block and a half away. It was a very significant lead for us. We were getting ready to deploy 2 troopers to fly down to Miami to follow up on this lead.
Meanwhile, one man's obsession with a similar case leads to an even bigger break in the Molly Bish investigation. 7 years before Molly vanished, another young blonde girl in a nearby town went missing.
Holly Peranian was a little girl who disappeared in 1993 in Sturbridge, which is a few towns away from Warren. She was blonde-haired and blue-eyed, and she was visiting her grandmother when she was taken.
What had happened is Holly went with her little brother to go down the road to see some new puppies.
But only Holly's brother returned home that day. The only clue that led police to believe Holly had been abducted was her shoe, found by the side of the road.
What do you do? How could that happen? Everybody was so frightened. Nobody knew what had happened.
At the time, Molly Bish was 10 years old, the same age as Holly Peranian. She heard the story of Holly's abduction while attending church one Sunday.
And the priest had suggested writing to the family and sending you prayers. And so Molly wrote this beautiful letter about how she hoped Holly would come home and how much she cared about her, and she was a beautiful child.
Eventually, local hunters found Holly's remains in the woods near where she was abducted. But her killer was never found. In May of 2003, 7 years after Holly's murder, a retired cop who worked the case comes to Warren. He believes there could be a connection between Holly Peranian and Molly Bish.
We have thought that Holly Peranian and Molly's case were connected because of being blonde and blue-eyed, because of the remoteness of where they were taken.
Given the close proximity to these 2 cases, there's a possibility that they were linked.
It just seems kind of weird these, abductions would happen so close.
Because Holly's remains were located by hunters, the ex-cop also questions them.
He said that he was interviewing individuals that frequented the woods in that area.
One local hunter tells him he does remember seeing something suspicious months earlier, but at the time, he thought nothing of it.
And he said, you have to bring me there. I have to see this. This could be, this could be Molly.
They go up to look and discover that this is for real.
What they find is a piece of cloth, which appears to be part of a blue bathing suit. It's the same color suit Molly Bish was wearing 3 years ago on the day she disappeared. Coming up, while the Bish family waits anxiously for answers,
We just need that one break, that one tip.
the investigation moves forward with a new suspect.
His family had a white car when Molly disappeared. He lived down the road from Holly Peranian. He fished at Cummins.
In Massachusetts, state police are about to deploy detectives to Miami, Florida. They have 2 eyewitnesses claiming to have seen Molly Bish, but they abruptly cancel the trip when a piece of blue bathing suit is discovered in the woods no more than 5 miles from where Molly went missing. It's the same color bathing suit Molly was wearing on that day. Police inform the Bish family of the disturbing discovery.
When they found the bathing suit, you're hoping it wasn't, but you're hoping it was at the same time. Because you want her to be found. You want her to just get some closure. And the other aspect, you don't want it to, because you want that hope to be alive that maybe she is in Florida or California or wherever, Thailand,
Police uncover the bathing suit in the town of Palmer, just outside of Warren. It's found in a heavily wooded area, known only to local hunters, possibly why the evidence has been missed all these years. The only way to determine if the bathing suit actually belongs to Molly is to run DNA tests.
The bathing suit was sent to the state police lab in Massachusetts for testing, both with DNA and physical examination of it. It was also sent to the FBI laboratory in Quantico, Virginia.
And while they wait for the results, the Massachusetts State Police launch a major search of the area where the bathing suit was found, hoping to find more evidence.
And that's when the chaos starts again with the searches, and just the manpower that came out was ridiculous. I mean, they pulled recruiters out of the state police, which is 180 men and women, to come search.
They used an anthropological grid, and they broke it down over 500 acres, and they searched shoulder to shoulder, digging through thick underbrush, up steep hills, through bushes and rocks.
This was the largest search in Massachusetts history.
6 days into the search, the DNA results from the suit come back, and they confirm that it belonged to Molly Bish.
I fell to my knees and I cried.
Another harrowing piece of evidence is uncovered 3 weeks later. Police find a human bone belonging to a person between the ages of 14 and 20 years old. And over the course of a week, they recover 26 more bones. Have they finally found Molly?
It was agonizing. You're in another sort of perpetual nightmare because you don't know, but you're having all these pieces of someone coming to you that you think is your sister.
6 days after the first bone was discovered, DNA results confirm what her family already seems to know. The remains belong to Molly Bish. Lead investigator Tom Green delivers the heartbreaking news to the Bish family.
The experience was difficult, and it had mixed emotions, I think, with the Bish family, that number one, they now know what happened to their daughter, but number two, the small, slim chance of hope that she'd be alive or found alive somewhere else in the country were gone.
Molly is buried on August 2nd, 2003, a day that would have been her 20th birthday. While the Bishes finally have a small sense of closure, justice still eludes them. The hope is that the bathing suit and Molly's remains would lead investigators to whoever is responsible for this unconscionable crime. But it's not to be.
The DNA that was uncovered from both the bathing suit and from the skeletal remains all belonged to Molly Bish. We had nothing that would lead us to another suspect.
Like Holly Peranian's case 10 years before, investigators find themselves at a loss with no other leads to pursue.
We just need that one break, that one tip.
I just believe we owe it to Molly to find who did this.
The profile of Molly's abductor was white, male, between the ages of 18 and 50, is known to the area, is either a fisherman or a hunter, has a history of violence with women.
But it's a man that police cannot seem to find. So the Bishes hire private detective Tom Shamshak to continue their own investigation. He is an ex-police chief from a neighboring town and a longtime friend of the Bish family. In October 2008, Molly's boyfriend Steve Lucas dies in a car accident without ever knowing who murdered his girlfriend of 8 years ago. That same year, a new suspect comes to light. A man in Florida named Rodney Stanger is arrested for the vicious murder of his girlfriend.
I was immediately struck with the remarkable resemblance between Rodney Stanger's photograph and the composite that had been generated from Maggie Bish.
And a person calls into the Massachusetts District Attorney's Office with information that this Florida man is connected to the disappearance of Molly Bish.
Really serious about her job, and she loved her dog. She took Boogie everywhere with her.
Are we going to PetSmart? You're gonna go play?
She sent me a text and she was like, "Hey S, if anything happens," and I was like, "Something's wrong."
Everyone was watching this case. It's a missing woman, but also it's a missing veteran.
She knew she was being videotaped, and she's leaving breadcrumbs.
It looked like maybe she was carjacked, maybe somebody pulled her out of her vehicle, maybe she was kidnapped.
A murder case is tough as it is, but a no-body murder case kind of is in a different league. You're looking at this person's actual final moments. It just strikes at your heart.
37-year-old Julia Jacobson is a woman on the move.
Julia was very hardworking, very driven, determined, focused. She had goals, and there was not going to be anybody that was going to get in the way of those goals.
When Julia was in her early 20s, she joined the Army after serving in the ROTC in college, and she quickly rose to the rank of captain.
Julia was one of my classmates and battle buddies in ROTC. A lot of times in the military, you'll find people that are very type A, but almost to a toxic fault, and Julia was never that. She was very centered, very grounded. She wasn't going to push you down.
I met Julia when we were serving with the 39th Finance Battalion in Germany. We were the same age, but of course she was an officer, I was enlisted. That just goes to show you how dedicated and driven she is. One thing about Julia that I really admire is she will not let you fail. She will always make sure that you succeed.
And those qualities prove invaluable for Julia, who served 2 tours of duty as a finance officer in Iraq.
Our mission in Iraq was to fund the outlying bases, and we would transfer large sums at a time by air. Julia put together a great team, and we all know our duties. Everything was very coordinated. Dangerous, yes, but we knew what we were getting into.
In Iraq, every place that you went was dangerous. And Julia, transporting large sums of money, had to be brave and had to be focused on the job at hand. Her with her wads of money. This is the Julia that I know and loved. Just soldier. I'm sure she is rolling before this picture is taken. That smile.
After her discharge from the Army in 2009, at the age of 29, Julia transitioned seamlessly from military to corporate work, climbing the ranks of the accounting division at the 7-Eleven Corporation.
I met Julia through work, and we became really best friends. Right away, she just wanted to help me become successful with the company. She was really serious about her job, and she loved her dog.
Are we going to PetSmart? You're gonna go play?
She took Boogie everywhere with her, and Boogie loved going to PetSmart. When I first met her, I went to her house with my dog, and it turned into about a 3-hour play date with our dogs. I was thinking like, man, this girl got this dog all over the place. This dog is out of control. Boogie stood on the coffee table. And I was like, your dog is on the coffee table. And she was like, it's okay. It's just Boogie.
Julia's devotion to her career leaves her little time for romance. But in 2015, she meets Dalen Ware.
I believe she met him on a contracted job on site of one of the 7-Eleven locations that she was working, overseeing. Julia was very personal and private, and she hadn't had a lot of partners either. He told her she was beautiful, so there was automatically a connection there. Dalen was her real intimate partner.
After a year and a half, Julia and Dalen elope to Las Vegas.
She was like, we got married in the drive-thru on the Strip. And then she just like thought it was so funny. I was like, you serious?
Julia puts her heart and soul into the marriage. But after several months, her busy work life leads to tension in the relationship.
She said, well, every time I travel, he'll wait till I leave and then call and be like, You're always leaving me. You didn't tell me when we got married that you wouldn't be available. You didn't tell me that I'd be in this house by myself. You're not giving me the attention that I need.
I got very, very tense, and you could just read the people's faces, and you're just like, this is not a good situation.
I just didn't like him, didn't like the vibe.
The conflict grows, and soon Julia feels she has no choice but to file for divorce.
She called me and she was like, I'm done, Chanel. Like, I cannot do this, I'm done. That was the first time I saw her cry, and it was a hurtful cry. And I was like, Julia, I don't think this guy is the right one for you.
The failure of her marriage is a disappointment. But within a year of her divorce, by the summer of 2017, Julia is ready to move on with her life.
She texted me one day and she's like, I met somebody, and she had met this guy named John. He was military, coming from a divorce from the East Coast, and he's in San Diego. She was like, he's nice, he's cool. I liked it. I liked the happiness, I liked the tone, the laughter.
On September 2nd, 2017, Julia sets out early from her home in San Diego for a road trip into the desert.
It was Labor Day weekend, and Julia was gonna just go have a fun weekend, enjoy having some time off.
I texted her on Friday and I was like, hey, what's going on? She texts me and goes, I'm with a friend. So that's all she sent, and I was like, oh, she got an attitude. I'm thinking she was with John. And she sent me a text and she was like, on my way to Big Bear. And I was like, was Boogie with her? And she was like, yes. Now, every time Julia has had a road trip, we will talk on the phone the whole time. 2-3 hours, no matter how long it was, her and I be on the phone the whole time. So that's all she sent, and I was like, something's wrong.
A short time later, Chanel receives a troubling set of texts from Julia.
Hey, S, if anything happens, she didn't say anything. So I just sent the question mark. And she goes, call my sister. And I was like, hey, what's going on? She didn't answer. And that was the last time we texted each other.
Later that weekend, when Julia's family doesn't hear from her, they also start to worry.
Julia had a very close relationship with her family, and she connected with them every day. When she didn't call on her daily call and then connect with her sister as well, they thought something was strange. That's when they started posting on social media to try to locate her, and then ultimately, a day or two after the holiday weekend, they called the San Diego Police Department to make a missing persons report.
On September 6th, the San Diego Police Department opens an investigation.
Julia had been missing a day and a half. My heart sank because that's not her. And you dread it because I didn't want to be negative about that and think, oh, something's happened to her. But I knew that something very tragic had happened.
Security camera footage helps narrow the search for Julia.
Was this going to turn out the way that everyone wanted, or was this going to take a darker turn?
And investigators uncover critical clues.
They came in separate cars and checked into the hotel.
I believe there was some kind of cadaver odor present inside of that vehicle.
At this point, all the arrows were pointing at him.
September 6th, 2017. It's the first day of the investigation into Julia Jacobson's disappearance.
Julia's friends rallied to support her almost immediately. And the fact of the matter is, they pushed this to such an extent that it was so unusual for somebody to be missing for 1 day or 2 days And to have the police react this quickly to start the investigation, and it was unique from my experience in 20 years of doing this stuff.
Investigators start the subpoena process for Julia's emails and online accounts. Meanwhile, San Diego police conduct a search of her apartment, where they find no signs of forced entry or a struggle. Next, detectives want to speak with those closest to Julia, starting with her new boyfriend, John, to see if he had been traveling with her that weekend.
On our radar very immediately was the relationship that Julia had just developed with a new person.
But John tells investigators he was not on the Labor Day weekend trip with Julia, and he hasn't seen her since.
Our first suspect is usually the closest person to the victim, especially when it's an intimate relationship. But we were able to check other things, including cell phone information, text messages, and so forth. So we were able to pretty quickly eliminate him as a suspect, or at least put him down a few tiers.
Julia's weekend travel companion is still a mystery, so investigators expand the circle of people they talk to, including Julia's ex-husband, Dalen Ware.
During the course of that day, Dalen Ware, he had been contacted by detectives just to see if he had known anything about where Julia was.
Dalen Ware told authorities that he hadn't seen Julia in about a year, and they had an amicable divorce. Everything was copacetic. It was fine. He lives in Arizona, so that's a pretty great alibi for him. So police weren't suspicious of him.
Desperate to learn what's happened to Julia, her friends and family launch their own search.
Julia doesn't disappear like that. Her sisters were even asking me, you think that she just wants to get away? But I was like, no, she's never going to just go somewhere and disappear and put everybody through that.
At that point, we really need to get rocking and rolling to get whatever evidence that we can get.
The San Diego Police Department organizes a team of digital investigators led by Peter Villiver to try to pinpoint Julia's whereabouts.
We have a 37-year-old military vet gone missing from San Diego, and our task was to locate her. I specialize in cell phone tracking. That's what I was enlisted for. So the investigators, parallel to my review of the call detail records, also were able to acquire financial transactions. It's not immediate, but when we parallel the two together, it gives us a better picture of her general whereabouts.
Investigators issue an alert to be on the lookout for Julia's car.
Her vehicle had the service that allows us to locate it, but it's very limited because it's not an active OnStar service, but we were able to identify where she stopped at a 7-Eleven in the Tierrasana neighborhood of San Diego.
Police visit the 7-Eleven store and ask to review its surveillance footage. They spot Julia in the video on the morning of September 2nd, just a few hours before her friends and family last hear from her.
When I look at that footage of Julia in the 7-Eleven, she's obviously trying to select some items and then doesn't select the items and just leaves the store without purchasing anything. We don't know why she was doing that.
Yep. That's Julia. Shorts and flip-flops. She's got a purse with her. To me, she does not look like she's concerned about anything. She's just looking like she's going on a small road trip.
Then, on September 7th, 5 days after Julia was last seen, police make a troubling discovery close to Julia's home in San Diego.
Julia's car is actually found parked a couple blocks from her house. Strangely, the keys were in the ignition, the windows were down, and Julia's purse was left in the car.
Julia always locked her doors, never left her windows rolled down. So I was like, it's not good.
So it looked like maybe she was carjacked, maybe somebody pulled her out of her vehicle, maybe she was kidnapped. That was a major red flag for authorities.
5 days after Julia Jacobson was last seen, authorities discover her car abandoned on a street near her home in San Diego.
Julia's car was recovered down in San Diego with the windows down and the keys in the ignition, but strangely, nobody apparently disturbed it.
Police impound the vehicle, a white SUV that Julia is believed to have been driving on her Labor Day weekend road trip. News of the discovery heightens interest in Julia's case across the region.
There's a push on social media to try to raise awareness. And I remember the weight of it. And it was an important story in our newsroom and for other newsrooms throughout a huge part of Southern California. And there's still a feeling of hopefulness. She became a recognizable face around the region. Those missing person signs were everywhere.
By the morning of September 8th, the mystery of Julia Jacobson's disappearance is growing deeper with each passing hour.
You've got police coming together from all of Southern California. Was this going to turn out the way that everyone wanted, or was this going to take a darker turn?
Our suspicions are pretty clear here what's going on. I was convinced Julia was dead, and I think the police were too.
In their search for more definitive answers, investigators are trying to track Julia's movements using her electronic data. It's a slow process. The information is trickling in gradually, in chronological order, a single day at a time.
With Julia Jacobson's case, we were about 72 hours behind every time we move. So we would find something that occurred 72 hours prior as we progressed the investigation.
Julia's cell phone data reveals that she took an odd path before she vanished. And it's a long way from where she told Chanel she was headed. According to credit card records, 12 hours after she was at a 7-Eleven in San Diego, she stopped in another 7-Eleven store. This one 100 miles north in Ontario, California.
If you're not in California and you don't understand the geography here, Ontario is nowhere near Big Bear. So it's incredibly unusual that somebody who says they're en route to Big Bear is suddenly in Ontario. It's like a 90-minute drive at least. It makes no sense.
Once again, detectives are able to identify Julia in the surveillance footage. And again, Julia's behavior in the store raises questions for the investigators.
We see her on the two videos, and she goes in, she looks around, she touches a few items. She knows, having worked at that corporation, that you go into that store, you're on a video camera. This is a highly intelligent, sophisticated woman. To me, as an investigator, I'm looking at that and saying, she knew she was being videotaped, and she's leaving breadcrumbs for any investigator if something ever happens to her. And it just makes you wonder why she was doing it.
And there's no explanation for why Julia strayed so far from her stated destination. No hint of her current whereabouts, and no way to even know if she is alive or dead. So police decide to take a new approach to the case.
Somebody in the detective bureau had the idea of having a cadaver dog involved. This dog is trained to smell cadavers. We had the San Bernardino sheriff cadaver dog travel down to San Diego to the San Diego Police Department's evidence holding facility, which was essentially a parking lot.
It's the parking lot where Julia's abandoned vehicle is being held for evidence.
They had impounded her vehicle, and I brought my cadaver dog down to see if there was any cadaver odor associated with this vehicle. The vehicle was in a secure police lockup, so what I did was release the dog inside the locked storage facility where I think there was 5 cars total, and I had no idea whose vehicle was the victim's vehicle. Canine Ellie immediately circled all the vehicles and then really started detailing a smaller white SUV. I could see that she only had interest in that one vehicle and one vehicle only.
It's Julia's white Chevrolet Equinox.
She wouldn't leave it alone, and she refused to leave that area. I was able to open the rear tailgate. Ellie hopped right in and was almost going crazy, sniffing the ceiling upholstery and the upholstery of the seats in the rear cargo area. There was nothing we could see, but I interpreted Ellie's behavior as a positive for some kind of cadaver odor on the inside of this vehicle.
Investigators can now only assume the worst.
Our suspicions were no longer suspicions. We knew. We knew that Julia was dead.
A week after Julia Jacobson was reported missing, a cadaver dog finds indications that a dead body has been in her car.
She was only looking for cadaver. That is the only detection odor that she's imprinted on. Now, there was nothing visible that we could see, but she had definitely detected something there.
The missing person case is now likely a homicide, but the investigation hasn't turned up any suspects. As her best friend Chanel tries to make sense of what might have happened, she can't stop rereading the final text messages she received from Julia.
If anything happens to me, call my sister. So that plays in my head over and over again. Something wasn't right. Julia's very detailed, so she never would send me a short text like that.
Chanel can't help but wonder about the mysterious friend with whom Julia was traveling.
And I started realizing if she had Boogie with her, the only person that would be around was Dalen.
Julia's ex-husband, Dalen Ware, has already been interviewed by police, who believe he was hundreds of miles away in Arizona that weekend. But Chanel isn't buying it.
Boogie only liked certain people. She loved Julia, she loved Dalen, and she loved my dog and me. So whenever Julia would go traveling, only people that can watch Boogie would be me or Dalen. I think she never stopped really talking to him. So I finally was like, I bet you she met up with Dalen.
Chanel reaches out to the San Diego police with her revelation, but they tell her there's nothing in the investigation pointing to Dalen Ware.
They kept on saying that they're interviewing other people. I was like, please look into it.
When the subpoena for Julia's computer records in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, and they suddenly begin to share Chanel's suspicions. They discover dozens of hostile and threatening messages, sometimes as many as 15 a day, sent to Julia from Dalen Ware.
So here's one email from Dalen Ware to Julia. He wrote, "It could have been so easy, just apologize and tell the truth. But you want to be evil and run and hide and hurt me worse. Wrong move, mother. Last message, you're going to regret this, you dumb B-word. You got off easy before, but not this time," with a couple of exclamation marks. It's pretty aggressive. It's pretty horrifying.
Julia's friend Chanel is not surprised. Julia has told her that her ex isn't happy that she's got a new boyfriend.
He was livid about this guy, John. Oh, he was livid. You know, he hated that she was with him and that she was happy.
But why would Julia have met up again with Dalen and keep it a secret from her friends?
I think that everyone, men, women, everyone, we have told little white lies or withheld some details from people in our lives to either protect ourselves or protect them from the truth. I think it's pretty common to withhold a few details because you know that you're going to get the wrath of your girlfriend or your mom or your sister who doesn't think you should still be hanging out with so-and-so.
With a possible motive, anger at Julia's new relationship, investigators begin taking another look at Dalen. As they do, a new credit card transaction posts to Julia's account, prompting a breakthrough discovery.
So through the records that I reviewed on the evening of the 2nd, we were able to locate where she stayed at in the general vicinity. And then at that point, the investigators were able to specifically identify the hotel that she was staying at. It was a hotel off of Interstate 10 in Ontario, which was the DoubleTree Hotel.
Investigators immediately contact the DoubleTree Hotel to review their guest registry. It confirms that Julia booked a room for 2 nights, starting on September 2nd. Detectives also acquire the hotel's security footage.
When they go back and they look at video footage from the hotel in Ontario, they see Dalen Ware with Julia Jacobson.
They came in separate cars and checked into the hotel.
We saw Julia walk in at about 9:46 p.m. with the suspect and with Boogie, and she was never seen leaving the property moving forward.
That's the last picture we have of Julia. You can't help but think, what is going through this young person's mind? It's inescapable as a human being. You never know when your time is going to come, but you're looking at this person's actual final moments, and it just strikes at your heart.
Investigators in California believe Julia Jacobson was murdered during a road trip on Labor Day weekend. And they now have proof that her ex-husband, Dalen Ware, was with her on the day she went missing.
Now, there was enough evidence to then go back to Dalen Ware and start questioning him. And that's when he changed his tune.
He confirmed that he had been with her. He called it the last hurrah. He knew that this was the last time she was moving on to something, and there was something that was going to be breaking or changing in their relationship.
But Dalen firmly denies harming Julia in any way.
He then explained to the police that he left her on September 4th, and they mutually departed from the DoubleTree Hotel, and that they're both moving on in different directions of their lives.
Detectives are skeptical. Dalen is now their prime murder suspect.
At this point, all the arrows were pointing at him. Our suspicions are pretty clear here what's going on here, but do we have enough to file a murder case? Not yet. We had to have more.
Knowing that Dalen was with Julia at the hotel, the investigators begin tracing his moves through cell phone data and financial transactions, as they have been doing with Julia. As the records come in, a disturbing picture emerges of Dalen's activity in the day and a half after they checked in, beginning shortly before 1 a.m. on the morning of September 3rd.
So those early morning hours of September 3rd, Dalen Ware went to the Walmart store in Corona and purchased a number of items. One of those was a 50-gallon tub, some black sheets, a shovel, and some bleach. But then he went to another Walmart and he purchased another series of items. One was some kind of wrapping cord and kerosene. He's going to 2 different locations in the middle of the night to purchase these items, and we know something is going on here. In law enforcement, we call that a murder kit.
Then Dalen returns to the DoubleTree Hotel in the early morning hours.
About 4 o'clock in the morning, hotel surveillance videos Dalen Ware getting one of the hotel dollies from the lobby back to the room. And about 15-20 minutes later, the same individual pushing the dolly was seen with what appears to be containers towards the parking lot.
We have surveillance footage of Dalen leaving the DoubleTree, and he loaded a 50-gallon tote on the luggage cart and then put some items to kind of obscure the tote onto the luggage cart, and then he took that and loaded it into Julia's car. At no point do we see Julia.
After loading the items into Julia's car, Dalen is seen returning to the room, where he remains until about 5 p.m. on September 3rd.
So at this point, Dalen Ware again went to another same big box retail facility. This time he went west towards West Covina.
Credit card records show he purchases additional storage bins, as well as kerosene, football receiver gloves, and other items. In the early evening of September 3rd, Dalen returns to the DoubleTree Hotel.
6:43 p.m., there was a swipe card transaction on the key. So he was in the property of DoubleTree in Ontario.
Dalen is captured on video leaving the hotel for the last time in the early morning hours of September 4th. Julia's dog Boogie is with him now, and they drive off in Julia's car. But there's still no sign of Julia. Investigators are able to roughly track the car's movements using the vehicle's OnStar system.
At 6:37 a.m., the OnStar showed a location off of Interstate 10 at Washington Street, which is in Palm Desert area. When the detectives went there, they went to 2 different gas stations to say, hey, can we look at video surveillance on or about this time? And lo and behold, the detectives was able to capture a video surveillance of the suspect and the victim's vehicle in a car wash.
And what we have is surveillance footage of Dalen in the back of Julia's car, taking out those 50-gallon totes and taking the car wash, not to wash the car, but to wash the totes out. He puts the totes back in the car, and then they proceed further west down to San Diego, where the car is abandoned a couple blocks from Julia's house.
The detectives find more images of Dalen on surveillance video. On the evening of September 4th, they see him near where Julia's abandoned car was found.
We have Dalen walking from the general location of the car, ultimately to a Denny's location, where Dalen got into that taxi cab and had the taxi cab drive him all the way back up to Ontario, another 100 miles, and drop him off at a location of a Motel 6, which was directly across the street from the DoubleTree Hotel. So he was caught on the camera at the Motel 6 getting out of the taxi cab, and then apparently walked across the street and retrieved his car, which had remained in the DoubleTree parking lot this whole time. And then we know that he traveled east again, back to his home in the Phoenix area.
The case for bringing murder charges against Dalen Ware now appears strong, but there is one key weakness.
A murder case is tough as it is, but a no-body murder case kind of is in a different league. And so you have to be able to paint the picture of the sequence of events and where this all leads. And the loose end we had was we didn't have proof that somebody was deceased or murdered. So we knew we had to have some proof that she was not just missing.
On October 13th, 2017, nearly a month and a half since Julia went missing, San Bernardino County prosecutors make a calculated gamble.
Dalen Ware was arrested in his home in Arizona and brought to San Bernardino County to face murder charges. So we filed it as a first-degree murder case, knowing full well this would be a challenge. We knew we had to find Julia.
Dalen Ware has been arrested for the murder of his ex-wife, Julia Jacobson. It's devastating news for her family and friends who've been desperately searching for her.
My feelings were so hurt. That's all I can remember, is that I knew it. You know, I knew that he had something to do with it. And even though they arrested him, I was trying to convince myself that, you know, maybe she's still alive somewhere.
Prosecutors have a challenging job ahead of them. Without a body, proving that Julia has been killed will not be easy. In late October 2017, authorities from multiple agencies begin a massive search for Julia's remains.
We know that the OnStar device tracked them to an exit off the 10 freeway in Riverside County.
Based on that OnStar data, investigators narrow the search area to a 6-mile radius of rough, arid terrain.
It took a lot of people coming together to try to find her. 120 people out there with these search parties, searching this 6-mile radius, which is huge in the desert.
But after weeks of searching, they still can't find Julia.
We didn't have that information, and the only person that we could get it from was Dalen Ware. I proceeded to start negotiating with the defense attorney for Mr. Ware, and I kind of gave him an ultimatum with some incentives, and ultimately we agreed to enter a plea deal with Dalen Ware for second-degree murder.
On December 1st, 2017, Dalen Ware agrees to help investigators find Julia's body.
He took us out to the location in that date palm area in a very remote part of the desert.
Investigators enlist Deputy Sheriff David Moyer and his canine Ellie to help search. The same dog and handler that detected the odor of a dead body in Julia's car.
As soon as I let Ellie out of the car, she took off into the desert at a dead run. And we're running way out into the desert. And sure enough, Canine Ellie went to it like a laser. There was an area in the desert I could see with a tremendous amount of animal disturbance, and the very first thing I could see from a distance was a pink dog harness that had been pulled out of a shallow hole.
We had the remains of a human, and we had the remains of a dog, all buried in this shallow grave.
This person took Julia's life and took her most beloved friend's life. And I think that's especially sickening.
Well, I was at work and I got a text message from Julia's sister. And she was like, hey, can you talk? So I got up right away and I called her and she was like, they found Julia. And I was like, where? Well, they found her in the desert and they found Boogie with her as well. And I screamed. And I just fell to the floor. And all I kept thinking was, she didn't deserve that.
Julia was taking steps after the divorce to further separate herself from Dalen. And from my standpoint, I know the power dynamics of a relationship, especially if a female is breaking off the relationship, that can trigger violence. And if she's standing up for herself and drawing a line in the sand and saying, enough's enough and I'm moving on with my life, in my mind, as a prosecutor, I know that's a very dangerous time for her.
In accordance with the deal brokered by prosecutors, Dalen Ware pleads guilty to second-degree murder and receives a sentence of 15 years to life.
15 years is not enough. But you know what? He will rot in hell. Because somebody with that kind of anger and that kind of hate and that kind of evil, he deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison.
Julia's friends and family hang on to every moment they can.
I just miss her caring nature. She just wants to see the good in everybody. And I think ultimately that's what led her to her fate.
I can close my eyes and I can see her smile and I can see her laughter, and she would light up a room. Julia left a mark.
My dog's never been around the beach or the water. He's enjoying San Diego.
For Chanel, one of their final moments together stands out.
Come on. It's okay.
The summer before Julia went missing, when they walked their dogs on the beach in San Diego and spent hours enjoying each other's company.
Julia never liked taking pictures of herself, and I was always the camera person. I had came to San Diego and we were going shopping, and I was like, let's take a selfie together. And she was like, nuh-uh, you're the Miss Glam Girl, I'm not the glam girl. And I was like, take a picture. And she's like, all right. And we took this picture together. Yeah, that was my buddy.